Welcome back to the poker vlog. This is episode number 112, and for this one, we head out to the East Coast, play some 3-5 no limit, get into some interesting spots. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. Let's go ahead and get started. This trip, we're at Maryland Live, and it's fancy here. It's almost Christmas time, so they've got the decorations up. I actually arrive a few days early to relax in the hotel room and enjoy some of the property's amenities. They've got a gym, which I've been trying to go to more frequently because these beers are catching up to me. I'm almost 32 now. They have a lot of good restaurants. In fact, the night before the meetup game, Andrew and I go to the steakhouse. We treat longtime viewer Ben Adler to dinner. He drove 12 hours from Chicago with a cracked windshield to make it, and that kind of effort obviously deserves a steak. The next day it's on. People show up in full force at the poker room. We've got a few special guests, including Johnny Vibes, Matt Vaughn, and Trevor Savage. We're playing 3-5 this evening and have 23 tables going. That's the record. I buy into the game for 1,000, which is the max. I take my seat to play, and shortly after, I look up to see Ben behind me. He's looking sharp, and he's got gifts with him.
Nice.
Shower beer hole. If you've never had a beer in the shower, it is a life-changing thing.
I've always wanted one of these. It's a great gift for anybody. For a long time, I've just been holding the beer myself in the shower and dropping it like an idiot. Now let's get to what you're here for. In the first hand we'll go over, we have King 9 suited on the button. Under the gun opens a 20. This kid is wild. He's not afraid to bluff off his whole stack. I want to get involved in pots with him. The cutoff calls. I may fold King 9 suited against a lot of other players' raises, but in position against the wild under the gun guy and with one other opponent, I call. The small blind calls. The big blind calls as well. We go 5 ways to the flop and we're last to act. The dealer puts out Jack 3-3 with 2 clubs. Checks to me. We've got a flush draw with 1 over and a backdoor straight draw. There's merit to both checking or betting. I go with a bet of 55 to hopefully win the pot right now or create a bigger one in case I make a flush. The small blind folds. The big blind does something odd. He pulls out 55, then looks down at his stack as if he's going to raise. He reconsiders and then just calls. This whole sequence of events is very subtle, but it makes me think he has an extremely strong hand. Under the gun and the cutoff both fold. It's heads up. The turn is the 8 of spades. The big blind checks. I'm not going to be betting after it looks like he wanted to check raise me on the flop. Ordinarily, I probably would bet again. I check. The river is the 7 of spades. The big blind checks again. I don't have much showdown value. Bluffing might not be a bad idea if I didn't think something was up. I check back. The opponent turns over a full house. He has 7-3 suited. He flopped trips and boated up on the river. He tried to get sneaky, but we saved some money by making a key observation and not falling for his trap. Next, we've got Ace King in middle position. I open to 15. The hijack calls. I believe he plays for a living. The cutoff 3 bets to 50. This is a small sizing, and it's even more alarming since it's coming from a player who I hadn't seen make any pre-flop raises so far. I imagine he has something very strong. Typically at 4 bet in this instance, I'm not going to do it under these circumstances. I flat. The hijack does something that makes no sense. He 4 bets to 175. If he had aces or kings, he probably would have 3 bet my initial raise. I don't know how he's doing it here. If the cutoff folds, which is unlikely, then I'll jam. I'm not sure at all what the hijack is trying to represent. The cutoff goes all in for 640, confirming my suspicion that he's super strong. My decision's pretty easy. I fold. No reason for me to get involved when I could be crushed. The hijack eventually folds. The cutoff shows pocket kings. He has the goods. The hijack tells the dealer that he can flip over the cards to expose ace-queen offsuit. I wish the hijack had the same read on the situation that I did, so we could have seen a flop. It's been a few hours since we started. I'm not able to get anything going. My stack has dwindled, so I add on for 400 more before picking up ace-8 suited in the big blind during an 8-handed $15 bomb pot. The flop comes queen 10-7 with 2 clubs. We flop a flush draw with 1 over and a backdoor straight draw. Small blind checks. With draws to the nuts, I usually like to put pressure on my opponents. I bet 50. Under the gun plus 1 calls. Small blind calls. 3 of us are seeing the turn. It's the 5 of diamonds. No help to us. Small blind checks. I still have plenty of equity, and I didn't get raised on the flop, so I'm most likely up against other draws or 1 pair hands at best. For that reason, I'm going to crank up the pressure. I bet 180. Under the gun plus 1 folds. Small blind folds ace king offsuit. He had 2 overs with a gutter. We don't have the best hand, but we finally win a pot for the day. Here I've got ace 10 of spades on the button in a straddle pot. Middle position player limps in for 10. I raised to 50. The under the gun straddler defends. He's a younger guy who I assume plays for a living. The limper calls as well. We go 3 ways to the flop. It's king queen 4 rainbow. Under the gun and the middle position player both check. This is a great flop for us, not necessarily because of what we actually have, which is a draw to the nuts, but mostly because of what our perceived range is compared to what our opponents are going to have. We can have sets of kings and queens, king queen, aces and ace king. Our opponents would have 3-bet with most of those holdings, so the best hands they can have are king queen and pocket fours. Other than that, they won't even have top pair, top kicker. Because this board favors the pre-flop raiser so much, I don't need to bet large, I make it 70. The under the gun player calls, he may have a king, a queen, or some sort of straight draw. The middle position player folds, it's heads up. The turn is the 8 of diamonds. Under the gun checks. I'm keeping my foot on the pedal. I bet 180 like a psychopath. I've got nothing. Figure I'm up against one pair at best. That's gonna put him in a tough spot. The player thinks for 30 seconds, then folds. We can't make any hands today, but we've gotten some bluffs through. We are the proud owner of this pot. In this one, we've got ace king suited in middle position. Under the gun +1 limps in. I raise to 20. Small blind calls. Under the gun +1 calls. We go 3 ways to the flop. It's ace 9 deuce with 2 hearts. What a dream. We've got top with the flush draw. Checks to me, I bet 30. Small blind folds. Under the gun +1, looks like he wants to raise and then just calls. It's interesting because I pretty much have the world. We're heads up. The turn is the queen of clubs. There are possibly 2 flush draws out there now. Under the gun +1 checks. I consider checking back after seeing the opponent almost raise me on the previous street. It just seems too nitty, and I've got a hand that can call a raise anyway. I make it 70. Under the gun +1 indeed goes for the check raise, making it 150. I'm definitely not going anywhere for 80 more. I call. It'd be great to hit a heart here. We do not. The river is another 9. Under the gun +1 bets 200. This is not a fun spot to be in. If my kicker didn't play, I'd snap fold. It's just such a small bet. What do you limp in with pre-flop that has me beat? Maybe ace 9 or pocket deuces. That's about it. I'm back to beating ace deuce if that happens to be what he check raised me with on the turn. I can't fold for this price. I call. The opponent has pocket deuces. I wanted to let it go. I just couldn't get myself to do it. We lose. Later, I'm dealt ace king again. This time, I'm under the gun. The whole table agreed to do a round of straddles from this position. I've got $10 invested before the cards are even dealt. The cutoff opens at 30. Late position raises don't necessarily signify a ton of strength. The small blind seems to be aware of that and puts in a 3-bet to 85. The small blind could have a wider than normal range himself. Because of that, I put in a cold 4-bet to 250. Notice, this is a slightly different scenario than earlier on in the session when I just flatted a 3-bet with ace king. Cutoff folds, small blind lays his hand down as well, claiming to have had ace queen. We win a nice little pot without even having to see a flop. Now we have ace 10 of diamonds in the small blind. It's a straddle pot. Middle position player limps in for 10. The hijack raises to 35. I call, the limper calls, we go 3 ways to the flop, and it comes jack 6-6 with 2 diamonds. It's our 4th flush draw of the day. We haven't hit any of the previous ones. I check. Middle position player checks. The hijack bets 55. I'm gonna stick around. I call. Middle position player folds. We're heads up with a pre-flop raiser. The turn is an ace. We make top pair to go along with our draw. I check, expecting it to check back a lot. If the opponent has something like kings, queens, king jack, queen jack, or jack 10. He doesn't check back. He bets 110. This is strange to me. He's either bluffing the flop with a hand like ace king and has me beat, or he's saying he has pocket aces, pocket jacks, a 6, or ace jack. It's also possible he's completely bluffing, and it kind of feels that way. I call. The river is the 7 of hearts. We break another flush draw. I check. The hijack snap jams for 320. The fact that it didn't even take time to think about it makes me very suspicious. The issue is that I don't beat a single hand that he's betting for value. My kicker doesn't even play. I called a $200 river bet earlier and was wrong. I don't want to call and be wrong again. I'm on the fence. I'm looking for anything to sway me in either direction. Ultimately, it comes down to the fact that the opponent is wearing a Santa hat. You can't trust a grown man wearing a Santa hat at the poker table. I make the call. Christmas has come early for us. The hijack flips over 10-4 of clubs for nothing at any point in the hand. He must have been after those Bradley dollars hard, and he got straight punished. I was put to the test, but I made the right decision for a big pot. We're all the way out of the hole, and we're actually up 210. What's even cooler is that a guy named Mark gives me a t-shirt that has one of my map illustrations on it. He's modeling it himself. It looks pretty good. I'm working on making some t-shirts and other merchandise available soon as well. Back to the poker, we're at a new wild table with big stacks and lots of dudes that typically play higher. I look down to see king 10 suited in the cutoff. It's a straddle pot. The middle position player opens at 40. The hijack calls. I call. The under the gun straddler calls. We go 4 ways to the flop. It's king 10-9 with 2 spades. We have top 2 on a very connected board. Checks to me. I bet 100. Under the gun and middle position fold. The hijack calls. The turn is a 5. That's a safe card. The hijack checks. There's so many bad rivers. I want to charge my opponent if he wants to stick around. I bet 250. He folds. We've got the winner. If few orbits later, we've got pocket nines on the button in the straddle pot. The cutoff opens a 40. I call. The under the gun straddler calls. We go 3 ways to the flop, and it is a good one. It's queen 9-7 with 2 clubs. We have middle set. Under the gun checks. Cutoff bets 75. I'm gonna raise it. I toss out 250. Under the gun folds. Cutoff calls. He may have an overpair. He could have ace queen or perhaps a flush or straight draw. The turn is a 5. Cutoff checks. I bet 375. Perhaps he'll jam on me with an overpair or as a semi-bluff. Nope. He flats, leaving himself with about 585. The river is the 10 of clubs. This is one of the absolute worst cards in the deck. The flush gets there, as does a number of straights. In addition, it may scare hands that I'm beating, so they might not call a bet. Luckily, the cutoff checks. Could have him beat. I'm not exactly sure what I'm up against, and I don't know what hands I'm beating that would call a bet once everything gets there on the river. I check back. The cutoff isn't too thrilled I checked. He has us beat, but not in a way that I thought.
Sick. The king.
The opponent has king jack of diamonds. He called the flop raise with a gutter and called again on the turn and completely drills it on the river. That one's painful, but the check back allows us to lose the minimum. It has not been a particularly easy session. At least I'm only stuck 450. Things are about to get better. I pick up pocket aces in the under the gun straddle, 6 hours into the session, and about time I get a big pocket pair. 4 players limp in. The big blind, who was the nemesis in the previous hand, raises to 75. I can't tell you how happy I am about that. I 3-bet to 220, hoping it'll look like I'm steaming and coming after the opponent. The 4 limpers fold. The action's back on the big blind.
Maybe I can make the vlog in a good way. Not like
You owe Brad money.
I do owe Brad money.
You do owe Brad money.
You should like pay the 220 and just come on. That would definitely make the vlog.
Pia that man is money. There you go, Brad. I feel bad for that last one.
I hope you make the vlog in a good way. That'd be great. The flop is 8-6 deuce rainbow. It's pretty fantastic for a 3-bet pot. After the big blind checks, I bet 200. The big blind folds king queen offsuit face up. We get some money back from him and show the aces. I'm at my 8th table of the night where I've got queen 8 suited in the cutoff. 2 players limp in. I figure I may as well call in position to see a cheap flop. The button calls. Small blind raises to 25. Folds to me. I'm getting a good price. I call for 20 more. The button folds. It's heads up. The small blind checks dark. The flop comes jack 5-3 with 2 hearts. We have our 5th flush draw of the session. We haven't had any luck actually hitting the other 4. It's hard to break 5 though. I bet 30 and immediately get jammed on, which to me doesn't typically signify a ton of strength.
Let's gamble. I missed every flush draw today.
Oh no.
Calling?
You're behind.
Oh shit.
Ace jack, that's pretty good. I got some outs.
Heads up and all in. Good luck.
The opponent has ace jack for top. This is about the best case scenario. I've got 12 outs. It's essentially a coin flip.
And boom.
Right there on the turn. Doesn't even have to sweat.
Finally make a flush. It comes at a great time. This is the 2nd largest pot that we've won today, and we are again out of the hole. If you have any problem with the way that I played that hand, then look away now. You're not gonna like this. I do something that you're absolutely never supposed to do, and I'm actually a little bit embarrassed about it. I get all loosey-goosey, and I eat a sandwich at the poker table. If you haven't already hit the unsubscribe button and exited the video, you'll notice something pretty amazing happens while getting the shot of the food. I'm dealt pocket kings under the gun +1. I wasn't expecting to get involved in a hand. That's why the camera angle is going to be a little bit messed up throughout this one. I opened to 15. Cutoff calls, small blind calls 2. We go 3 ways to the flop. It's ace queen 3 rainbow. Of course we're going to lose while eating. Small blind checks. I check. The cutoff checks. Maybe we have the best hand. The turn is another ace. That's a good card for us, making it less likely that one of the other opponents has one. Small blind checks. I bet 15. It's a small amount to get calls out of someone holding a queen or worse. Cutoff calls. The small blind folds. We're heads up. The river is a jack. I'm feeling pretty good about kings. I make a value bet at 35. The cutoff calls again. I turn over my cards. They're good. The cutoff mucks and says that he needed a king, so he must have had jack 10 for a gutter on the turn and a pair of jacks on the river. So last one they'll go over for the night. Despite not making too many big hands over a long session, we avoid losing piles in certain spots and escape with a small win.
Just cashed out. I won $210 over about 9 hours. It was a long session and nothing really came easy today. For the first several hours I ran pretty cold. and luckily got unstuck a few times to book a win. We had 23 tables going. That was awesome. It's pretty amazing that this place can get 23 additional tables and run everything smoothly. So really cool to have Johnny Vibes, Matt Vaughn, and Trevor Savage join Andrew and myself. We broke the record. All right, time to head to the bar.
It's always great to hang out with everybody once the poker's over, so if you're ever able to make it to a meetup game, be sure to stick around for this part as well. That's it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons because it helps out the channel a ton. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know in the comment section. I'm happy to get back to you. Big thanks goes out to Maryland Live for having us out there, and they did a great job. Their entire staff did really well. Thanks to everybody who came out. We had 23 tables of people. That is the record. Probably somewhere around 300 people showed up all together, which is awesome. And let's see, we got a couple meetup games coming up. First one's gonna be January 10th and 11th at Gardens Casino in the Los Angeles area. And then we're going out to Asper's Casino in London. Our first European meetup game. It's gonna be January 23rd through the 26th. All right, guys, that's it for me. Happy holidays, good luck at the tables, and I'll see you next time.